Today's story comes from Diane in New Haven, Connecticut. She has witnessed several near-death experiences and deaths as a hospice social worker. Bearing witness to death on a regular basis and being a support to a family's grief process is no easy task and takes true compassion and strength. She was able to share some of her first-hand experiences with us. This is her story. Hello, I'm Diane. I was a hospice social worker for the last 20 years and wanted to share some of the stories of patients I've encountered with permission from their families in order to share their remarkable stories with you. I saw many terminally ill patients at the end of their life, sometimes even being there during their last breaths. I had also seen some strange occurrences with the pets of these terminally ill patients. I strongly believe that animals are able to sense when their owners are about to die, and have heard patients, some who were known to be atheists or having no belief of God or an afterlife, suddenly believe in heaven and an afterlife moments before their death, after telling me they saw lights, tunnels, or family members that had passed before them come to their bedside. I had one patient I worked with tell me her husband, Mark, was sitting next to her, telling her not to be afraid, that heaven was beautiful. Another time, I had a young man about 40. It was very sad. He was a terminally ill patient with cancer. When I had done the intake with him and his family, they told me he didn't believe in God or heaven. He did not subscribe to any religion. We have to assess this as we can arrange for religious support or leaders of various faith to come talk and pray with the patients. But moments before his death, he told me he could see angels approaching him and felt a strong feeling of love. His parents, who were there at the time, began to cry and were grateful that their son was able to feel comfort right before his death and able to go peacefully. I will never forget this one experience I had. There was an older woman, she was 80 years old, who had not been married and had told me she had been adopted as a child and never knew her birth parents. She did not have any children, but had her faithful cat, Misty. The woman had been a smoker most of her life and had emphysema and lung cancer. One day I went to her house, and Misty, who would usually run away when I would come in the house, was found sitting next to the woman, nuzzling her head into the woman and nudging the woman to open her eyes. The woman then opened her eyes, and the cat started purring and looking up to the same spot on the ceiling that the old woman was looking. The woman started to smile, and Misty started to purr louder and rolled over a couple times as if someone was petting her. The woman was unable to speak at that point, but it was evident to me that both of them were able to see something that I was unable to see. The old woman looked peaceful and happy, and a few moments later she passed away. Another time, I had a man who was about 69 years old. He had a very hard life. He had lost his wife and child in a car accident, in which he was the only survivor when he was 50. Regardless of this fact, he had a beautiful view of life and retired after the accident, but still spent most of his time volunteering with dog shelters and at the hospital. So I knew of him and the kindness he demonstrated to others, even though he had lost everything important to him. He had pancreatic cancer and was quickly succumbing to the illness, and his symptoms began to progress rapidly. He was fostering 2 dogs at the time and had a friend who was helping him with them, but they stayed in his home as comfort animals. He told me he was ready to go and be reunited with his wife and son. I am always hoping for a miracle with my patients, but I remember this time I was hoping he would not suffer any longer and hoping he would get his wish to be reunited with his family. He had the 2 dogs next to him, and I was with the nurse at the time, trying to arrange the pillows on the bed to get the man and his dogs more comfortable. The dogs, who almost never moved away from him, suddenly jumped off the bed and went to the door of the bedroom and were barking at thin air. The man then looked at the door and said, "Paula, Justin." The dogs then relaxed and jumped back up onto the bed after realizing the man recognized what the dogs were seeing. I remember looking at the nurse who was there with me, and we both felt the presence of other beings in the room. I get the chills just thinking of it, because it also solidified for me at that moment that there are loved ones that do come for us when we die, or are there all along and we can't see them. Sometimes I would think, well, with all the hard drugs we give the patients for the pain, they may be hallucinating. But this one man refused any of those medications because he had been in recovery for 30 years and wanted to stay sober until his dying breath, which he was able to do. He passed away later that night without suffering, which was what the overnight nurse had told me. Then there's one patient, Bill, who was etched in my memory. He had an NDE right before his final death. He had stopped breathing for 2 minutes, and we thought he had passed. But he came back. What he told me and the nurse was that he had went through a tunnel, and at the end of it, he was welcomed into heaven by his wife and parents. He told us that they would be coming back to get him, but they let him come back to Earth so he could say goodbye to his children. We immediately called his children and let them know that their father wanted to say his final goodbyes to them. Within the hour, all of his children were at the house to see their father. Bill told his children about meeting their mother in heaven, along with their grandparents. He then told them that their mother had wanted to let the youngest daughter of the children, who was until that point an atheist, that she was accepting of who she was and knew that she was a lesbian. The daughter then looked stunned as everyone faced her. "And I accept you too," Bill said. Everyone in the room was shedding tears as the family joined in to hug their father and found proof of Bill's story being real, as they had not known of his daughter's sexuality until that point. Bill passed away later that day with his children by his side. One story I was reluctant to share because of the circumstances was one of a young man who had attempted suicide. He was a troubled young man, 26 years old, who had tried to kill himself by poisoning himself. He did massive damage to his internal organs and became very sick, most of his organs shutting down. He should have died, but had started to recover. He came into hospice care at the request of his family. His heart stopped one day, but he was resuscitated. When he came back, he said he had seen his fate. He was taken to another realm. He told his family that he was going to make a full recovery, and he was going to start his life over. He had made multiple suicide attempts in his short life, but this one brought him to the edge. He said he went to a heavenly realm, and he was told that if he attempted once more, he would succeed at finally dying. However, living, he would be able to turn his life around and succeed at becoming what he truly wanted, a famous rock star. He was a talented musician, but his depression had always gotten the best of him, and all the rejections he had faced on the path of his becoming famous had made him feel hopeless. He came back with a new view of life and no longer feared being rejected, as he was assured that he would become what he wanted in the end. His health started to improve dramatically, and he was no longer in need of hospice care. I followed his story for some time afterwards and heard his songs on the radio. His story was truly a miracle, and although I am not able to share his name, he has talked about his experience openly before. His story gives meaning to the quote, "Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle." I always believed that there was something beyond this world, and I have seen enough proof in my work that we go on existing after this world. In supporting families who are in the grief process and patients who are approaching death, I know that every experience is different. Not everyone I've encountered has had vividly communicated to me that they see white lights or family members moments before their death, but more often than not, I do feel we get little signs here and there, if we pay attention to them, of loved ones crossing over to a better place. Thank you for watching. If you're intrigued by the mysteries of the mind, subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.